Alright, our long-awaited character Dehya is finally available as a version 3.5, and she will be our brand new 5-star Pyro Claymore. Now with Dehya, she is in a very particular situation because she is going to be a standard banner unit as of 3.6, and she will have her own promotional banner in version 3.5, our current patch. Now Dehya is a very fun and I guess you could say unique character when it comes to how she plays, and she can fit in a variety of different roles. Now Dehya, we are going to be talking about her talents, her artifacts, her teams, and her weapons, all to talk about her best builds and what she can do. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. First, let's talk about Dehya's talents. Now Dehya's talents can change your prioritization depending on what teams you want to use her on and what build that she's on. So in her team section of the video, we are going to be talking about extensively what talents are used the most and what talents you should level up. But for right now, let's go over a brief overview on her talents and her passives that affect her. But let's go ahead and start with the normal attack, Sandstorm Assault. Now Sandstorm Assault is a full 4-part normal string, and this ends up with, depending on the size of the enemy, them getting launched up with a really cool looking punch. Other than that, there's really not much to it. This will be useful in one of her teams, but let's go ahead and talk about Molten Inferno, which is her skill. Molten Inferno is a 2-part skill, one being the Indomitable Flame and one being the Ranging Flame. The Indomitable Flame deals AoE pyro damage and creates a field known as the Fiery Sanctum. This first part of the skill is only unleashed when there is no Fiery Sanctum field on the ground already. If you do have a Fiery Sanctum field on the ground, you will go into the second part, which is the Ranging Flame. This skill deals another instance of AoE pyro damage and also recreates another Fiery Sanctum field at the new position at which Dehya is in. So basically, you are going to be deleting the old Fiery Sanctum and putting down a brand new one, but it will only get the duration that the previous one had. So you will not be adding extra duration or adding on extra seconds. When you create the second field, it will only inherit the remaining duration from the first field. Now, talking about the thing we've been talking about the whole time regarding Molten Inferno, which is her Fiery Sanctum, you get a good amount of benefits and you get some attack when you're standing in this. The Fiery Sanctum is this red field that glows around Dehya, and this will deal AoE pyro damage every 2.5 seconds based on Dehya's attack and max HP. Now the benefits you get from standing in this Fiery Sanctum are some really cool new mechanics and some overall buffs to your character. The active characters within this field have their resistance to interruption increased, and when I mean increased, it's a lot. And we're going to be going over one of these resistances to interruption buffs in a quick second because it also flows into her passive. Now talking about the brand new mechanic Absorption. Now Absorption is this brand new mechanic unique to Dehya at the current moment, which is created by her Fiery Sanctum field. When an active character is inside the Fiery Sanctum field, they will pull damage from their instance of damages taken and pull it into Dehya's HP pool. Now due to Dehya having mitigation on her skill and on some of her passives that we will talk about in a quick second, she takes a lot less damage from the part that she's pulling from the other character. Now with this damage being taken over time, we basically will get a reverse of this due to a certain passive in her kit as well. Now this mechanic is very unique as it pulls damage from your current character and puts it into another character, and it basically is going to allow your character to survive for a longer time. But the big question is, why would you run this over a shield? Well, this goes with her skill in nature. Her skill is doing AoE pyro damage based on how many times you attack, or basically whenever you attack an enemy every 2.5 seconds, you will get a pyro hit onto that enemy. Now pyro being one of the stronger elements in the game, adding pyro to characters or hitting them with pyro damage is going to allow for some really nice reactions to happen. This can help you with vaporize, this can help you with melt, and this can also add burgeon or burning to a bunch of different characters, and having the pyro element applied to these characters are going to allow for a multitude of different really good reactions to happen while you are getting this damage reduction, while you're getting this resistance to interruption. It's not something that a lot of characters have when you're popping their shield or their survivability tactic. Units such as Layla and Diona, they both apply one hit of cryo, and of course Diona has a special thing with her charged one where she applies 1.5. But it's only a one-time thing and is not over an extended period of time. Once you hit an enemy with the pyro attacks or the hydro, anything that reacts with cryo, that will be taken off. Geo with Zhongli, he does have a universal buff, but he doesn't allow for elements to be put onto enemies because of that Geo adding crystallize and taking away the reactions. Dehya is just a really nice character with being able to periodically put pyro onto a character and become the survival character for your team. So not only are you getting a quote-unquote shielder with the absorption mechanic, but you're also getting periodic pyro damage and pyro elements applied to enemies. This is really well when trying to use reactions with your team and allows you to free up one slot. You won't have to use a survival character slash shielder slash healer because you'll have Dehya on the team and she will also be applying pyro. Now this slower hit for the pyro that is done by her field is going to help a lot when she synergizes with Dendro teams, which is one of her best teams, and we will be showing that in a quick second. Now going on to her burst, which is the Leonine Bite. Now in this state, Dehya will automatically and continuously unleash the Flame Main's Fist, dealing pyro damage based on her attack and max HP. When this duration ends, she will unleash a Incineration Drive, dealing AoE pyro damage based on her attack and max HP. One thing to know about Leonine Bite or her burst is that if you have a Fiery Sanctum field created by Dehya's skill and it is done while you are unleashing Leonine Bite, she will retrieve it and then create another field once Blazing Lioness duration expires. This field will be taken from the duration of the previous Fiery Sanctum and put onto the new one. Now while you are in this state, you cannot cancel it unless you switch out from another character, and in this state you will be unable to use her skill or any of her normal attack talents, and all her normal attacks and her skills will be changed by Roaring Barrage. Now Roaring Barrage is going to be the attacks that she will do in her string of fist punches during her ult, and this can be used every 0.4 seconds, and you can increase the speed every time you do it before the 0.4 seconds. Now if you don't hit it immediately every single time, it will have a slower chain of hits, so depending on how fast you attack, you will have a different amount of hits depending on your speed at which you are attacking. You can have lower hits if you do it slowly, and you have more hits if you do it more fast. Now talking about Dehya's first passive, which is Unsisting Sucker. With 6 seconds after Dehya retrieves the Fiery Sanctum field through Molten Inferno Raging Flame or Leonine Bite, she will take 60% less damage when receiving damage from Red Main's blood. This is the absorption mechanic that we were talking about earlier. This effect can be triggered every 2 seconds. So basically, once you use the second part of her skill or the end of her burst, when she takes the Fiery Sanctum field and replaces it, she will take even less damage from her absorption mechanic. This helps a lot with taking the active character's damage and putting it into Dehya's HP pool, and it mitigating almost nothing for Dehya, making her survive even longer, making her able to take more damage from the absorption mechanic. Now another thing that's really cool from this passive is that 9 seconds after Dehya unleashes Molten Inferno Abominable Flame, or within 9 seconds, sorry, she will grant all party members with the Gold Forged form state. This will further increase a character's resistance to interruption, and this will be only if you are standing within the Fiery Sanctum field. Now I can tell you that this resistance to interruption increase for those 9 seconds of her field, you are not able to be thrown around by nothing. I have tried a lot of different ways to be thrown around hits with this character that is inside the Fiery Sanctum field, and if you're inside those 9 seconds within that field, anything to Ganyu's charge shot to Wanderers floating in the air will not be interrupted no matter what, as long as you are in that 9 seconds for her Indomitable Flame skill. So other than that, this is a really nice passive to have, a lot of damage reduction for her absorption mechanic, and a super amount of super armor for her skill when you are in the Fiery Sanctum. For the second passive is Stalwart and True. When her HP is less than 40%, Dehya will recover 20% of her max HP and will continue to restore 6% of her max HP every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. This effect can be triggered once every 20 seconds. This is what I was talking about, how all the damage is basically reversed after you are taking it in for Dehya through her absorption mechanic. She is basically her own Statue of the Seven. Every time she's lower than 40% HP, she's able to regenerate HP non-stop every 20 seconds. And every time you get low, and by the time that 20 seconds is up, you will literally be regenning every single time she gets low. It's absolutely amazing. It makes it so that you never have to go for the Statue of the Seven during fighting bosses or anything, because she will be taking up all the damage and then she will be healing up all that back. So it's really cool to have this passive. And then the last passive, which is really cool, the Sunlit Way. Her movement speed is increased during the day, and I did not expect this to be that fast. I've never tried the other characters with the nighttime version of this passive, and since for some reason I feel like when you play the game you're during the day for the most part, that is a big movement speed increase for your team, and especially if you use Dehya's passive and then stack it with other characters like Animal Resonance or anything like that, it's really fast and you're able to travel really far. So I'm pretty sure you can make some crazy teams with Dehya and be able to travel super fast around the world. It's just really cool quality of life passive. So now, other than that, let's get into Dehya's best builds. Now, she has 2 builds that she specializes in depending on what types of teams you want to run with her. There can be 3, but I find these 2 the most optimal and the most fun to use, more streamlined to use, and we'll be going over both of them really quickly. Now, for her first build, I think is her more fun build. Her more optimal build is her full EM build. Now, this full EM build can be achieved with Gilded Dreams, but there are also other types of artifacts that you can use. And this is because in her Dendro teams with her creating Burgeon, because of her periodic pyro application, she's able to create the reaction of Burgeon very easily and very quickly. Now, with Burgeon, you have a bunch of different artifact sets that you can work with when it comes to her builds or the way you build her around Elemental Mastery. Gilded Dreams helps a lot because it increases Elemental Mastery by 80 for the 2-piece set, and for the 4-piece set you get more attack or more EM depending on the characters that are on the team and the element types that are on your team. There are also other artifact sets that help with this for Burgeon. The Crimson Witch of Flame set, which I think a lot of people forgot can help as a sub-DPS type set, because it also increases Overloaded, Burning, or Burgeon, which she basically reacts to within her teams, by 40%, and then using the elemental skill, which you're going to use a lot on Dehya, is going to help that starting bonus of pyro damage get even higher. So this is going to be really good for Dehya running her on Burgeon. You can either run Crimson Witch of Flames, Gilded Dreams, or the very new artifact set that we got, which was the Flower of Paradise Lost. This also increases Elemental Mastery by 80 and also creates Burgeon reaction damage is increased by 40% and gives even further buffs on or you being able to have this effect go on. So there are 3 different artifacts that you can use for Dehya when it comes to her EM sets. But other than that, you're going to just want to stack full EM on her and as much HP as you possibly can, because that HP will pull into her absorption mechanic and the EM will help with the Burgeon. She's going to do some nasty numbers with her Burgeon. I have played so many different comps and other styles of gameplay for Dehya, and I really feel like her Burgeon team is one of the best teams that you can run. It reminds me a lot about Nilo's style of gameplay. You're basically creating, instead of the Bountiful Chorus, some really crazy Burgeon reactions with the Dendro Chorus, and it's super fun seeing all the fire and all of the burning and Burgeon reactions happening with her teams that we're going to be talking about very soon. But those 3 artifact sets are really good for her EM build, and then for her hyper carry build, we are going to be using the Crimson Witch of Flames. I do think this is the best option that you can do because of the pyro's damage bonuses and the reactions. This is overall just going to be the standard, I guess you could say, build for most DPSs, which is attack percent, pyro damage goblet, and a crit rate damage circlet. Now, we're not going to be running HP stands just like Hu Tao because the HP scaling on Dehya's talent is very minimal. You want to stack attack more than HP. HP does help because it flows into her absorption mechanic, but for damage purposes, attack would be the best one. These 2 sets of builds are going to be the most fun or optimal builds. I have 36 Start Abyss with these 2 builds, so they're both very optimal, very useful for Dehya. Talking about her weapons, we also have 2 different sets of weapons depending on which build you want to use for Dehya. For her hyper carry DPS, we are going to be using the Beacon of the Reed Sea, which is her crit rate signature claymore, and with the passive of after the character's elemental skill hits an opponent, which is basically all the time, their attack will be increased by 20% for 8 seconds. After the character takes damage, their attack will be increased by another 20% for 8 seconds. And the 2 aforementioned effects can be triggered even when the character is not on the field. Additionally, when a character is not protected by a shield, their character's max HP will be increased by 32%. Fun fact, this last part of the passive always procs as long as Dehya is not on the field because they technically won't be protected by a shield. If you didn't know that, that's a really cool thing to note when you're using this claymore. This will be her best hyper carry weapon for sure. Of course, you have other different options. The Serpent Spine can work, but it will lose a lot of stacks, and I mean a lot when you are taking damage, so it's not preferred. But if you want to use her as a hyper carry with the burst playstyle, the Luxurious Sea Lord can help a lot, and also for other things like the Wolf's Gravestone, the REHOO Storm Thresher. There's not a lot of crazy claymores that you can use for her hyper carry playstyle, but the fish sword, basically the Luxurious Sea Lord, is going to be one of your best, including all the premier 5-star ones like the Beacon of the Reed Sea, the REHOO Storm Thresher, and the Wolf's Gravestone. All of these can work very good and very easily. Now her more free to play, I guess you say, options for her EM build, what I think is her best build, is definitely going to be any of the swords with elemental mastery on it. So rain slasher can definitely work on Dehya because you're not caring about attack, you're caring about full EM to be able to get those burgeon reactions hitting as much as you possibly can. And basically, I know there you go, the blood taint's a great sword. This works as well. This also helps because it's a damage increase to enemies affected by pyro, which is most of the time because of her periodic, I guess you could say, damage from her field. And if you're pairing her with Nahida, they'll basically always be with pyro afflicted. One of her best, and I mean absolutely best, EM claymores is going to be the mailed flower from the Wind Bloom Festival event that we are going to have for our 3.5 version patch. This has Elemental Mastery main stat and also has an amazing passive as well, which is Whispers of the Wind and Flower. Within 8 seconds after the character's elemental skill hits an opponent or triggers an elemental reaction, their attack and their elemental mastery will be increased by 12% and 48% respectively. Now this is R1. This is going to get a lot larger when you have it in R5, which we're easily able to get through the event. This is going to be a monster on Dehya in most of her teams because she's able to have that EM boost and that passive boost her attack and EM, having her field hit a little bit harder and having her burgeon reactions hit a lot harder. After going her weapons and her artifacts, let's go ahead and talk about her talents and then onto her teams, which we will be going over what her best teams are, what her most fun and optimal teams are. We'll be going over that really quickly. But for Dehya, her C1 is Dehya's max HP is increased by 20% and she deals bonus damage based on her max HP when using the following attacks. Molten Inferno's damage will be increased by 3.6 of her max HP and Leonine Bite's damage will be increased by 6% of her max HP. So I guess you could say C1 is a very strong constellation for her, especially because she's going to be a standard banner unit after 3.5. Getting the C1 is not going to be that hard if you're summoning for Dehya at the moment, and having the C1 is going to overall increase her damage because she is going to get a lot of HP buffs from her weapon or from her ascension. And if you do have HP subsets on your artifacts, this will help a lot when it comes to getting her damage up there. For her C2, when Dehya uses Molten Flame Ranging Flame, which is the second part of her skill, the duration of the recreated Fiery Sanctum field will be increased by 6 seconds. So before, when I said that it will not carry over extra seconds or put a new circle down, with C2 it basically does. So this is really cool. And additionally, when a Fiery Sanctum field exists on the field, damage dealt by its next coordinated attack will be increased by 50% when active characters in the Sanctum field are attacked. So if you ever get hit while you're in the Sanctum field, whenever you re-put the Fiery Sanctum on the field, you will have a stronger coordinated attack, and that's really cool because for the most part you are going to be getting hit because that's your main reason for putting it down and having that pyro application. So C2 is very strong as well, but C1 still has the better value. C3 gives her bursts extra 3 levels. C4 is when Flame Main's Fist and Incineration Drive attacks unleashed during Leonine Bite hits opponents. This will restore 1.5 energy for Dehya and 2.5% of her max HP, and this effect can be triggered once every 0.2 seconds. So you're going to be getting that regeneration boost for your energy, and you're also getting some max HP back. This is going to help a lot, keep her alive almost infinitely, and you're going to be able to run Dehya as a hyper carry more efficiently, more optimal when you have C4, because you will be able to burst more often, especially with mono pyro teams. You'll be able to basically get infinite burst. And then for her C6, she is going to get crit rate of her burst increased by 10%. And when Flame Main's Fist attacks hits an opponent and deals crit hits during a single Blazing Lightning state, it will cause the crit damage of Leonine Bite to increase by 15% for the rest of Blazing Lightning's duration and extend that duration by 0.5 seconds. So this is basically, for the most part, a lot of the C6s for a lot of different characters, increasing crit rate and crit damage. And it also increases her burst duration, which is going to do some massive damage on the right teams. So for the most part, I do think that C1 is going to be the most valuable and the strongest constellation for her. So if you're looking to get her best constellation, C1 might be the way to go. But since she will be a standard banner character, you should probably pull just for C0 and then hope whenever you lose that 50-50, Dehya will, take that slot and you get C0 for free. Lastly, talking about Dehya's teams. Dehya's teams can be part of 2 different optimal teams that I think are the best through extensive research and playing through her for the most part. Burgeon and Hyper Carry Dehya are absolutely fun to play. I think these are the most fun teams I've played in a long minute. For Burgeon Dehya, you're going to be using a Hydro unit, a Dendro unit, and a EM sharing unit alongside Dehya. So team of Kamisato Ayato, Nahida, and Kazuha, I think are the sweet spot or the best virgin team that you could possibly make. That is the most fun, because Ayato, of course, has a very simple and straightforward way to play with his skill and just normal attacking. Nahida will be able to apply the skill, allow Ayato to create dendro cores, and with Kazuha's EM sharing, he will be able to boost Dehya's virgin reactions very immensely with his C2, and also, of course, his passive that he has as well. Since Dehya's skill is a slow hitting pyro field, this will allow Ayato to be able to allow his Hydro to be able to react with Nahida's Dendro and be able to spawn as many Dendro cores as he needs to, while Dehya's field is getting ready to take the hit, and then it will create a bunch of virgin reactions with the Dendro cores that are already on the field. This is a very fun way to play Dehya, and it also has insane AoE potential for a lot of characters on the field. When you're playing the Spiral of Abyss, I do say that you should use this on the field with a lot more characters on the side, and not really the boss centered version of the Spiral Abyss. This was a 36 star clear with this team. It's super fun. It was able to clear out Makukenki, the triple Makukenki. So other than that, this virgin team is absolutely insane, really fun to play, one of the funnest teams I've been able to play, and something I'm really looking forward to playing for the future, because man, this team is fun. Just like Nilou's Hyper Bloom team or her Bountiful Core team, these two basically are a mirror of each other, so it's a super fun team to play with. Her second team is going to be, well, going back to the virgin team, you can change the characters on this. Ayato you can change to Yelan or Xingqiu. Nahida you can change to Yao Yao and Dendro Moon Traveler. It is a little harder to do with Kolai just because of how restrictive the space is, but it is possible. And then you can trade out Kazuha for Sucrose and Albedo because they are both EM sharing units. Sucrose will be a little bit better, but Kazuha is of course the optimal choice. And then for hyper carry Dehya, you're going to be using Mono Pyro. Me personally, I don't think we have units to be able to synergize with Dehya's burst enough, because Xingqiu and Yelan's burst do not work well with Dehya's burst because they don't activate. They're just like Rain's situation with Beidou. Dehya's unable to use Yelan's and Xingqiu's burst with her ult, so you can't really use the best Hydro characters. And for Mona and Kokomi, those two characters have stationary Hydro application, and if a character gets pushed out of that field that they're in or occupying, you're basically going to be wasting a slot. So I do think Mono Pyro is the very best team to run Hyper Carry Dehya, just because Bennett C6 is going to be able to turn her hits into Pyro, her normal attack strings into Pyro, and it does a considerable amount of damage. The Bennett is going to be able to buff Xiangling's burst. All of these characters with Pyro are going to be able to battery Dehya's burst. Kazuha is going to be increasing EM and also giving elemental damage bonus on Pyro since the whole team is Pyro. And you're basically going to be doing a bunch of damage over a period of time, being able to get some nasty numbers on her skill and on her burst. So Hyper Carry Dehya is going to be Mono Pyro, and it's going to be the more fun of the two teams. Now you can use Dehya as of course the support unit that she is, and also put her on teams with like Ganyu for Melt. You can have Nahida's skill react with Dehya's skill, and then it will create burning. Having Kazuha on the team allows for burning to extend for longer because the Pyro will be able to be periodically applied through his burst. And then Ganyu with the resist to interruption, being able to mitigate damage through Dehya's absorption mechanic. She will be able to do her melting, her charge shotting without being interrupted. Same thing with Wanderer. Wanderer is able to stay in his floating state and not get knocked down when he's in Dehya's Fiery Sanctum. So this helps a lot, and also increases his attack from his synergy for his passive. So there's a lot of different teams that you can run, especially with hyper carries or other characters that react to Pyro very well. There's a lot of different ways to use Dehya as a support character, as a sub-DPS character, as a hyper carry. There are many different ways to play with Dehya, and I do think she's a very fun character to play. So overall, my thoughts on Dehya. For the most part, Dehya is a very fun character with a unique playstyle who can basically fulfill a bunch of different roles. She's actually very good to play with and feels very nice to play with. I do think for her being on the standard banner, she may be one of the best characters on the standard banner in my opinion, just because of the utilities that she brings, having periodic pyro application through her skill, not her burst, being able to have damage reduction in his resistance to interruption through her skill, and her being able to be a pretty fun hyper carry if you want to build her that way. I just think she has a lot of things going for her, and she's not as bad as many of us thought she was going to be, you know, through streams and through what we've seen through her footage and a lot of different aspects of media. So I do think Dehya is a very strong character with a lot of different utilities. But for the most part, I will be making a video regarding if you summon for her, because she still is a standard character at the end of the day. But other than that, that's going to be basically the guide for Dehya and how you should build her or how you should play with her. Other than that, let me know if you're going to be summoning for Dehya, how you're going to be building her, what teams you're going to build her on. But safely to say, I think she's still an amazing character. I think she's still a good character. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all to the end. See you on the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and if you're going to be building Dehya in the future. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching the video. See you on the next one, and peace.